Welcome, everyone. I'm Ann Petrick, Senior Director of Research at Vistage Worldwide, and I'm happy to host the latest webinar in our Peak Performer webinar series. This series is designed to support your leadership climb by bringing the most trusted experts to the Vistage community, experts who bring exceptional insight and best practices, helping you navigate new challenges and possibilities. Talent resources are tight these days. The latest jobs numbers show dramatic improvement, which also translates to a tight labor market. Companies need to be thinking about everything that they can do to sustain a competitive advantage in retaining and hiring new people. And one of the key benefits that both current and future employees desire is professional development. In fact, our research shows that 2/3 of CEOs are developing existing employees in response to their hiring challenges. To help leaders of small and mid-sized businesses explore how to implement a learning culture and employee development planning, as well as the key dynamics that drive successful, impactful programs, we've invited Insperity here today. Insperity is not just HR outsourcing. They offer comprehensive, scalable solutions that offer an optimal blend of service and technology to facilitate growth by streamlining processes related to payroll, benefits, talent management, and HR compliance. They provide the tools to help you lighten your administrative load, maximize productivity, and manage risks so you can focus on growth. Our presenter today is Chris Brennan, who has been a performance specialist with Insperity since 2014 and has over 15 years of experience in the world of training and development. His background includes design, development, and delivery of training curriculum, as well as team building and improvisation facilitation and executive management coaching. Chris holds certifications from Franklin Covey, the Association for Talent Development, 360 Solutions, Omega Performance, DDI, Performance Thinking, and Extended Disc. In addition, Chris has been a frequent panel member at regional and national training conferences in the areas of leadership, performance management, and employee development. So that very much qualifies him to be here to talk about this topic today. So we're thrilled to have you here. Welcome, Chris. Over to you.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ann. I appreciate that. Thank you, Vistage, for the opportunity to be with you today. So today we are talking about this establishing a learning culture as a competitive advantage. And as Ann was discussing, the talent resources being as tight as they are, business owners are naturally feeling somewhat at the mercy of this ominous labor market. And right now they're looking for what arrows they might have in their quiver to not only find the best people to join their team, but also to keep the ones that are already there. So what we're going to talk about today is a couple of things, just to give you an overview. The importance of why a learning culture matters and why an employee development planning matters. We're going to talk about how we can get started in that and what the approach is that you can take. Then I'm going to discuss 4 key dynamics when it comes to employee development planning. And then we're going to also transition into talking about leadership development and what are the key dynamics that we can take advantage of in our organization there as well. So let's just kind of first look at some of the benefits that are entailed with building a learning culture. So when an organization is focusing on promoting a learning culture and employee development planning, things like enhanced employee engagement, certainly reduced turnover, increased operational efficiency, morale improvement. There's a platform for succession planning, fostering organizational commitment and loyalty, and then increasing work satisfaction and well-being. So there's many benefits, as you can see, to adopting a learning culture for your organization. And I know you might be saying, well, great, that's wonderful, but where do we get started? That seems like a lot, Chris, and it is, but that's what we're here for. So when it comes to creating a learning culture, an easy way to start is taking a look at the different platforms for employee development planning. So inherent in the employee development planning, there are a couple of areas that I think are important to consider. And the first one is job descriptions. Now, I know perhaps nothing is sexier than this topic, job descriptions, but I think it is important to walk before we run. So the thing about job descriptions, to take a look at those for your organization. Job descriptions help set expectations. They define competencies. They give guidance on what development gaps might be out there. So once we have that, once we start with something is foundational, is job descriptions, then we can move into something about individual development plans. So whether an organization delivers performance reviews or not, one I think terrific way to engage with an employee is to consider something called like an individual development plan. The benefits to promoting the learning culture is that the IDP, the individual development plan, are individually driven and carries a personal kind of intrinsic importance and motivation. So when you're thinking about putting together individual development plans for your people, just consider that they are about setting personal development goals, business focus, individual growth, business results, how they are impacted, how they are measured. And also when you're putting together an individual development plan, make sure that you have some sort of built-in feedback platform. Another part of this is employee situational development. See, natural employee development planning opportunities also arise in development junctions or employee situational development, such as in orienting a staff member to the technical aspects of a job, onboarding a staff member to the culture or to the values of an organization, even preparing a staff member for progression into a leadership path or part of a career pathing. So that's where we want to start with job descriptions, individual development plans, and employee situational development. I want to then kind of turn to some of the key dynamics that are involved in employee development planning. I'm going to share with you 4 key dynamics. So regardless of the stepping off point, a learning and culture or employee development planning takes on kind of a systematic or even a holistic approach to developing, to improve implementation. So when you're thinking about the different areas to consider when you're planning out your strategy, think of these 4 key dynamics. The first is technical skills. Again, these are the technical competencies that may be required for development, such as I guess they would be industry recognized certifications, process implementation mapping, project management, all of those things that are helping boost your organization's reputation with your clients, as well as expanding knowledge and demonstrating your commitment to your employees' career development. These can be anything, from Microsoft certified solutions experts or project management certifications. There are great organizations out there, great teams that you can partner with that can help support that by offering courses. Skillsoft comes to mind, all these types of organizations that can help provide those type of courses. In addition, you have non-technical skills. Those are considered soft skills. They're needed to effectively communicate, problem solve, collaborate, and organize. Non-technical skills are becoming more important, and as the workplace evolves both socially and technologically. A lot of different surveys, if you look out there, reveal that soft skills are actually more highly sought by employers than hard skills. So if your employees can communicate well with clients and listen, show empathy, emotional intelligence, this can certainly impact the customer satisfaction. And certainly organizations that I've worked with need employees who can build strong collaborative relationships, can translate that technical lingo into that plain speak to support clients and other business relationships. Certainly one of the more sought after skill competencies that in the workplace that I've come across is that critical thinking skills, right? And the ability to solve problems, and certainly time management comes to mind as well for that. So in addition to technical skills and non-technical skills, the other dynamics we want to talk about will be formal development, as well as informal development when you're developing that strategy to building that learning culture. So let's start though by, again, focusing on the non-technical skills. The non-technical skills are such as communication, building relationships, critical thinking, problem solving, time management. Each one of these in the organizations that I've worked with have been highly sought after. So what can you do in your organization to help enhance the communication skills from your team, how they can build better business relationships, how they can build that critical thinking, how they can build that problem solving, that time management. Again, in the technical skills, when you're considering the technical skills, what is out there that has been industry recognized certifications to help the organization? Again, through hardware, software, cybersecurity, cloud architecture, special certifications. Brings us to informal development. The informal development contains things like on-the-job training, which will help put the staff in the most realistic settings possible for learning tasks necessary for successful job performance. Coaching and mentoring and mentorship can help give staff a better understanding of organizational structure and organizational culture. Coaching and mentoring also helps develop new perspectives and is a fantastic way to introduce employees to work with leaders on a professional development, to help build future roles and perhaps even looking at succession and bench strength. Informal development can also include things like organizational meetings that give the staff relevant information, shared best practices, especially when it comes to communication meetings or huddles, thinking about what you're doing with your organization to consistently build that communication, whether it's, again, the large all staff meetings or the small huddles. These can be wonderful ways to kind of be a touch point for constructive feedback, and can also be a great learning moment. Communities of practice. Again, this is a wonderful informal way of developing your team. There are many wonderful professional networks out there that can be used to create and share professional knowledge. So doing your research and helping your employees do their research to find out what might be out there, what kind of networks they can join, what kind of communities of practice could help build their knowledge, build their relationships. Committee assignments, another great one. Committee assignments foster a team approach and collaboration for solving work-related challenges. Subject matter experts surface with critical knowledge to an organization's success. So what kind of things can I put my team on? What kind of committees can we establish so that we can kind of create that and build those skills? And certainly there are dozens and thousands of webs and apps out there that can help your team kind of offer instant access to that point of learning skills and the topics that are critical to task completion. Okay, so we've talked about the informal development, we've talked about the technical skills, we talked about the non-technical skills. Another part of this then is certainly the formal development. And the formal development contains courses, workshops, skill-specific training, programs, and targeted curriculum. Now, so certainly when many think of development, formal development comes to mind. Most people think that this can be a critical element in your strategy, because what you can do here is you can integrate these courses, you can integrate workshops and skills training, different educational programs, targeted curriculum that are structured generally and focusing on competency and behavior-based development. So certainly when you're putting all of these together, you have this holistic approach to employee development planning. So what might that look like? Let's take a situation where maybe you have a goal to orient a staff member to the technical aspects of the job. So maybe this was part of an individual development plan, that IDP that we talked about earlier. And maybe this was part of an individual plan that the staff member wanted to learn as part of their career pathing. Now, it'd be certainly easy to say, well, let's just, get them certified on something, or have them take a course, or have them go outside and take a workshop. And that happens all the time. I see that quite often. But if we did that, if we just left it there, if we just said, well, let's get them certified in this thing, or if we take this course out here, if we did that, we might not have generated that type of development satisfaction that the staff member might be looking for, and might not give them that overall sense of purpose of their career impact. So in addition to thinking about the courses or the technical skills, maybe we can start thinking about things like, well, what about communication skills? Maybe we can put together something where this particular staff member has to build a presentation for executives, or maybe we can assign this person a mentor, or maybe we can set them up with one-on-one coaching, so that not only are they gaining the technical aspects of development, but they can also become effective in speaking to the benefits of the stakeholders who are affected by this new technical knowledge, so that they can build these skills all at the same time. So you can see how you can kind of use these dynamics holistically to create an overall strategy for your team. And so when you're looking at this, the point here is that really everyone on your team is different, and you can kind of have that power to use these key dynamics to customize that approach for each and every person on the team. Okay. So certainly in addition to focusing on what we can do for our staff, we also want to make sure we're focusing on leadership development. And, as certainly leadership and learning are indispensable to each other. The benefits of developing our leaders is vast. It's increased productivity, it's employee retainment, it's helps nurture future leaders, it increases employee engagement. Developing your leaders helps model the leadership culture and also helps us make informed and better decisions. Certainly, the top two challenges facing business owners are developing our next generation leaders and the failure to attract or retain that top talent, right? So there was a recent study that said, I think there was over 2,400 organizations surveyed. And again, those top two are developing the next generation, developing that bench strength and retaining that talent. So I want to kind of introduce you to the key dynamics when it comes to building our leaders. And so we have leadership acumen, formal development, again, non-technical skills, and informal development. Leadership acumen can be about executing strategy, delegation, coaching, leading innovation, leading with authenticity. All of those things you can build on your team. In addition to building that leadership acumen, you can also look at formal development. Again, there are courses, there are workshops, you can help develop targeted curriculum. You can also develop or create or introduce them to a leadership academy of some sort that step by step will help build their skills. With our leaders, there are also so many non-technical skills that I've seen. Again, how can we make sure that they're building their communication? How can we make sure that they're building their business relationships? How can we make sure that they are building their skills in critical thinking, problem solving, emotional intelligence? In addition to that, we also have, again, the informal development of our leaders. What can we do to help build their coaching and mentorship? So many times, the organizations that I work with, we tend to see people get promoted into supervisors or to managers simply because they have been there the longest. And so when they get moved up into this one area, they find that they are not set up very well for success. So again, what are you doing at your organization to help them kind of build these dynamics? Are they being introduced to communities of practice, committee assignments? Do they know what the different things are out there that they can get, you know, the web and the different sites and the apps that can help them keep continuing to build? So all of these are, in addition to the leadership acumen, the non-technical skills, the formal development, the informal development. As an organization, always keep asking yourself, what am I doing to not only build my staff, but also what am I doing to build my current leaders and my future leaders? And there are some great ideas out there on how I've seen organizations using employee development planning and creating that learning culture. The first being new hire onboarding. So as soon as your employee gets onboarded, what are the things that we can do to make sure that they realize they're in a learning culture? What are the things that we can get them onto an IDP? What can we do to make sure that they know what's expected of them, their competencies? I've seen employee development planning used in career pathing. or perhaps even expanding the scope of assignments or staff proficiency or culture onboarding, refreshing skills and knowledge. Or maybe there's something else in there that kind of involves their individual development plan. So we walked through the learning culture and those benefits to your organization, to the individual as well. We talked about where to start and what are the key dynamics that we can consider when creating that strategy, either for the individual or for the next generation or the incumbent leader. But before we go, I just also want to make sure that we emphasize that effective learning cultures are supported by three keys. That each person is responsible for their own development. And that kind of goes back to that proactive habit, that everyone on the team needs to know that they are responsible for their own development. You can, as a leader, as a business owner, provide them the resources to do so. So leadership is responsible for guiding and supporting the development of their employees. And the organization overall is responsible for providing the opportunities for the growth of everyone. So as we wrap up, thinking about what we can do to introduce that or keep that, building that learning culture in your organization by focusing on a systematic yet holistic approach that can be supported by these three keys. And I would love to discuss this. I know that there are some questions out there. I know there's a lot of people having experience with this, and I would love to talk a little bit about it. I'll give it over to Anne to talk a little bit about, you want to talk about some questions we might have?
Yeah, absolutely. I loved the part at the end about onboarding and bringing new people onto the organization. How have you seen that change through the pandemic when people are in a remote or even hybrid situation?
Yeah, so in the last couple of years, it has changed a great deal. We have seen such challenges with the business owners, from how they bring their team aboard virtually when they don't get to all be in the same room with each other. They don't get to be in the same. What I've seen in my experience is that there have been great examples of this, and there have been some not so great examples of this. I think the ones that the leaders kind of realized fairly early, that rather than being a hindrance, this was actually more of an opportunity. And the leaders could kind of get creative on how they could bring the team together and see them grow. A lot of the examples that I saw that worked out really well, the leaders were able to kind of put together a hybrid approach of self-paced learning, virtual training, virtual team building, and one-on-one coaching. All of that was actually possible. They were finding through Zoom, and they found that out pretty early in the game. And what I saw was something rather surprising, that many of them said that these workshops and these one-on-one coachings, rather than doing them in person, were actually even more effective than they had been in the past. But I would also say that certainly an on-camera policy is helpful. Most people hate it, but I would say that that certainly was something that I felt very that helped people a great deal.
I know that kind of policy has been controversial. Like, do you let people be on camera when they're comfortable versus not. But I think, to your point, if there's certain trainings or coaching that's taking place, then you pick up a lot, you can still pick up a lot of cues in the little Zoom box for sure.
Definitely,
Uh,
definitely.
Culture is usually something that you experience actually in the workplace or with people, you can see demonstrated. So how have you seen companies provide the training that was on the onboarding list, like the culture training? What does that look like today?
Gosh, there's been some great examples of onboarding with the culture training. I think what comes to mind, there's been some organizations that I've worked with, they wanted to make sure that the employee knew that it was a priority right away, rather than, I think, what most in previous experiences, you would see that an employee would have to know where the kitchen is, how the phones work, how the emails work, all sorts of things like that, which, that's all important, certainly. But what I was finding was that business owners were putting together things right away to stress. They were making that a higher priority to introduce the culture in the organization almost immediately, like day one, day two, and even before, even during the recruitment process, they were making sure that they knew that this is a team, that this is what's important to our organization. And they were finding creative ways to reinforce that culture almost immediately, so that I found that there's probably people on this call that have experienced this, that when you are some of the organizations, Zoom works so well that they said, well, why do we need an office anymore? Why do we need that? And it's right. So there was organizations that I've worked with that went completely virtual. And the danger is there that you don't have the face-to-face. And so now you have that person out in North Dakota talking to their manager who's now in Seattle. And there is an inherent challenge there to lose separation. That was certainly a challenge before the pandemic and before all this, but it became much more apparent now. And I think, though, there's been a lot of great technology out there, certainly something like Zoom as an example, but the best examples I saw were when they actually focused on as a priority right away, that said, we want to make sure we know you as a person, not just what you can do for us. Tell us about your cats. Tell us about, and it became a very holistic way of saying, I want to know about you as a person. So much more in the last couple of years. I know everybody I know knows my dog, for instance. So that's, but yeah, that's certainly been a change.
Definitely. Okay, so moving to some of the types of training you talked about non-technical, and are there any specific, speaking of dogs, are there any specific examples of how to teach things like critical thinking, problem-solving skills, or even emotional IQ?
Absolutely. There's a lot of wonderful books and trainings and resources and videos out there that can help an employee or an emerging leader develop those. One example, something that I've done quite often, is like a communication type of assessment that can help them kind of understand their different types of communication styles, as well as the people that they're working with, so that they can kind of better understand that critical part of leadership. And I kind of I think that some of the classics, I tend to go with some of the classics, talking about the things that are a 5 dysfunctions or a 7 habits or something like that, because I think that those help build the foundation for a leader to understand what it is to be vulnerable and in vulnerability-based trust or something like that. So I kind of start with those foundations that help them understand themselves and their own particular leadership styles and their communication styles. And I think that can be very effective in helping them kind of get started in that.
Yeah, I'm a fan myself of crucial conversations and crucial
Yes.
accountability. I think those are great.
Yeah.
And I think, well, so that goes to, some of your self-guided, right? Recommending books or things like that people can guide their own journeys and recommend.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And again, that again, as leaders, what we can do, we can give them all of the keys, and we can give them the resources, and we can provide, you can go here, here, here. Ultimately, it's up to them and to make that decision whether or not they're going to take advantage of it. Hopefully they do for your sake, for the organization's sake. But what makes your organization attractive and gives you that competitive advantage is that you are there providing that information, so that they know that they're feeling cared for, that they're feeling invested in, that they're always constantly feeling like they're growing and developing. And again, those type of things will pay back for your organization.
Yes, I've worked for 2 companies now that actually had like business book clubs where select a book and everyone reads it, and that's available to all. That's not something that you have to be a cohort or be selected. That's something you can opt into.
I love that idea. I've seen that. I've led those book clubs. I'll call myself the Oprah of, and just we can all just sit around, and we don't have to be in a training room. We can be on couches and comfy, and certainly in a virtual setting too. And having those type of book clubs where people can kind of talk about how they can take those lessons from a book. I've just been doing a lot of work with the book Radical Candor, which is another great book for leaders who are struggling with holding their teams accountable and communication skills. So there's obviously so many great books out there, but I love an idea of a book club because it makes people feel informal, learning from each other, building relationships.
Absolutely. Yes. And I think we actually have a network that's dedicated to just books, things like that. So people can look at the Lead and Read network for some ideas.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love it.
All right. We have another question. Training really takes somebody really off the job. And so how can companies justify that opportunity cost, especially if they're in an industry that is focused on billable hours?
Yeah. Well, this is tricky, and I hope this is okay to say, but I don't maybe it's just my role, but I think that I don't necessarily think of learning as a cost. I think as more of an investment, and that what's that old saying that what if I train my person and they leave? Well, what if I don't train them and they stay? That setting. I certainly honor that, and I think that there are creative ways to recognize that and to work around that through self-paced courses. You don't have to take somebody off for 8 hours. There are so many different ways of doing workshops that are 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I just did a workshop for a group that we're doing an ongoing thing where we're doing 15 minutes. And I know that, initially back in the years ago, you'd say, well, how can you possibly learn anything in 15 minutes? But I think that's kind of the time we're in. So finding a creative way to get that learning and that knowledge, I certainly recognize that you can't take somebody off the job for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours because I'd rather have them on the floor making more money for me and for the organization. I totally get that. However, what they might, as long as you make sure that learning and development is getting exactly what you want out of it, so you know what the goals and the objectives are out of it, I think that it could be thought of as an investment, because that person that goes into that training room, if it's all done correctly, is going to be a different person when they walk out of it. And I think that's important to know, because that person is going to have maybe more creative. They're going to feel like they're growing. They're feeling like they're, happier. They're going to be, feel like they're invested in. So I guess that's kind of how I would look at it, rather than this person could be making X amount of widgets in this last hour. Why are they learning about building trust or whatever? So I think that's a thing to remember about that. When they go into that training room, they're going to be a different person when they come out.
Well, you talked about the, metrics. What kind of metrics can be used? Retention's a great one to measure the success of a learning culture.
Yeah. Well, when I started, I've probably been in this close to 20 years now. I started when I was 3, but
Exactly.
The holy grail for me was always, what's the ROI? What's the return on investment? If we could just find the right calculation, we're going to be able to know whether or not this training was worth it or not. So I guess over the years, I've kind of decided to not look so much for that ROI, that holy grail of ROI, but I tend to look at the things like climate surveys, engagement surveys. I tend to look at things like what are the turnover, what are the exit interviews saying, and those can help me kind of get a key on whether or not the learning culture has been effective, or in fact we need to start one. So I kind of tend to look at those metrics, those types of surveys, to get a better sense of whether or not there's something that needs to be done, that there's a gap. And I know there's probably people on this call who say, here's a great ROI calculation, but I've had trouble with them. I'll just say that. So I tend to look at the things that focus a little bit more on their sense of happiness, engagement, to reflect whether or not it's working or not.
Okay, great. And I would imagine with technical skills, if you're trying to improve skills in a specific area, if customer service goes through conflict management and you have improved, resolution of things, that you can attach metrics much easier to technical skills.
For sure, absolutely. For technical skills, it's kind of a different ballgame, but yeah, you can certainly do that. There are lots of different ways you can do that to measure, our customer service ratings versus now versus then, or things like that. That I think can be pretty good. Yeah.
Now, in a formal development program, you mentioned you had a 15-minute training recently. Can you share the benefits of maybe individual training events or workshops or courses even versus an ongoing program? What is the difference there?
I used to have long workshops. I'd have big 5 days, and they'd be 8 hours every day. And I'm sure that you've been on them and been in them. And I know that people joining us today have remember those fondly, right? And when you walk out of that 5 days later, you think, what happened? What am I? There's a good chance you've got a lot of information. You got a giant book probably. And I think there's some great value in there because you have a lot of resources going forward. But what I've kind of seemed to notice, especially when people are so busy, and they're probably thinking about their work while they're in front of you in a training capacity, that if you can get them 1 or 2 things at a time, they're going to be able to take that, let's say for a leadership series that I did recently, you talk about, what about delegation, or how about feedback and recognition, or something like that? How can we build that? And you just focus on, here's how you coach your employee. Here's how you coach feedback and recognition. Here's how you give them feedback. Now come back in 3 weeks. You have maybe some homework or something to work on. Give them time to practice that one thing. And they come back and you find that they're actually, has been a more effective way that I've seen that they actually are building skill by skill, and they're also gaining confidence in themselves that they can tackle the next thing. So the next thing might be, how do we do conflict resolution, or whatever it might be. So that's what I found, that the subject by subject over a series, an 8-week or a 10-week series seems to, in my experience, has been much more effective than I'm going to send you to this 3-day course, and good luck. So again, both have their strengths, but I've found that the breaking it up a little bit helps a great deal.
Absolutely, especially for different types of learners. So when you have a series like that, and there's the event, there's the homework, then there's the report back, how do you encourage or incentivize employees to attend those on a basis? Are there any best practices you've seen?
Well, there's a couple of different schools of thought on that. Some people, some organizations I've seen, companies that I've seen, will have a certain amount of, like, a training goal, for instance, that if they take 30 hours of training, they're going to meet their goal for the year. And I like that, but I don't know if it's necessarily going to help them really build their engagement and their knowledge. So having something like that, where they get, if you take 30 hours this year, you're going to get $3 raise or something like that. And that's certainly one way to do it. I think what I've seen is probably the most effective way is that when they are building these skills, that they're having a chance to use them almost immediately, rather than say, when you build these skills, maybe one day you'll be promoted and you can use them, rather than having your supervisor or your person say, I'm going to send you through this leadership training, and you came back, oh great, you know how to give presentations now. Well, next week I'm going to ask you to do a presentation for the staff. And so rather than putting it out on some other island, that one day you're going to be able to use all these skills, the best way to kind of incentivize them and keep them coming back is to have them use these skills immediately. So I want you to give feedback, or I want to give you coaching. I want you to delegate this. I want you to give a presentation, or whatever. I want you to resolve this conflict, but offer support, certainly. But also let them know that they're using these things right away. And I think that's been the best way because you do tend to see people coming back saying, I just used this, I just did it, I just gave a presentation, or I just helped resolve a conflict between some colleagues or something. And you do see that kind of motivating them, because they're in real time seeing their skills developing.
Yeah. So you're saying an important part of the accountability is engaging the manager of the employee or the leader that's part of those programs.
It's so important that there's full buy-in. I've seen this happen where the leader says, hey, Chris, can you put together this workshop for our leaders? And then the leader doesn't, I know they have things to do, I know they're very busy, but you should either make an appearance, you should say why everyone's here, you should, but if you have a hands-off approach where you're like, Chris, you go do the training, and I hope they'll be better, that tends to not encourage people, engage people. So I think that the leaders have to really show that they're committed and that they understand the objectives of the training, that they're fully invested in it. I think that's the best way to get everybody on the board.
Who holds the leaders accountable, right? Is that an HR function to be able to say, we're making this investment, so hey, leader of the person we're investing in, want to make sure that you're holding them accountable? Who holds the leaders accountable?
Yeah, I think that's a tough question, because sometimes some of the places I've worked with, sometimes the no one holds them accountable.
Mm.
And unfortunately, what ends up happening is that they come to me or they come to the trainer and say, what happened? I thought you were going to tell them how to do X, Y, and Z. But their morale is bad, and this is bad, and this is bad. That can happen if the leader is not fully engaged with the training. So I love the idea that HR or somebody, you're hoping that the leader has that ability to have people talk straight with them and talk to them. That's so important. It's not always the case, but if you can have somebody, for instance, with HR who says, hey, we're all in on this, this comprehensive, this strategy to kind of help build the culture. And here's what we need from you. And we need you to make sure you're also showing up at the beginning of the training and saying, welcome everybody, this is an important training, for instance. This is why we need you here, or this is why it's important to go on this learning path. I think those type of things are very important to get full buy-in. And so, yeah, somebody like HR would be a terrific, ideally that would be great to have HR be able to call the leader out and hold them accountable.
Yeah. All right, one last question. Our Q1 CEO Confidence Index, which is actually currently in the field until Monday, early results show that 75% of our members are investing in development specifically for managers and leaders, which is fantastic.
Wonderful.
How do you think that people should be selected? How can you guide leaders to select the cohorts, the people who get to participate in that training? Do you think that that's available to all, or different levels of the organization, new managers? How have you seen people select those leadership development participants?
It's interesting. There are some that you can see right away that have that interest already. They're self-starters. They know where they want to go. They want to build. They've communicated that to you, that this is where I want to build my skills. And that's wonderful. Wouldn't that be great if they were all like that? But they're not. And so what I think really is there are many employees out there, many people that you can see have the ability. They have the emotional intelligence, the communication skills. They have all this, and they would be great to bring to develop. So I think it partially falls on the employee themselves. That would be great. But if not the employee, if they're not recognizing that, and they never see themselves as a leader, or they don't see themselves growing, they just want to make enough money to go out on Friday. I think also it should be communicated among the leadership team that you should also be on the lookout to help foster that and help build people's confidence and help them realize that they do have these, they have these skills. Make sure you're giving them consistent feedback and appraisal, and let them know that these are the type of things that our organization needs. And I've seen that happen many times, where somebody who at an organization really didn't have any sort of dreams of being a senior vice president or something like that. They just wanted to kind of do their job and go home. But they had wonderful, customer service skills, communication, emotional intelligence. I kind of go back to that a lot. And the leadership kind of helped nurture that a little bit and help them believe that there is more out there for them. And I've seen employees rise as a result of that. And it's really inspiring to watch. But so I would say that as leaders, make sure you're communicating to the rest of your leadership team to always be on the lookout for who has the seeds of greatness out there, because I think that's important too.
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us today, Chris. And we've had a lot of questions about the slides, some of the great frameworks that you shared. So we will be sending a link to today's recording and the slides within 24 hours.
Great. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and for everyone today, we welcome you to join us for more upcoming webinars, including Gender Equity is Everyone's Business with Alyssa Sangster and Amy Orlov of the Forte Foundation. That's next Friday, March 18th. You can find more information and to register for that webinar at vistage.com/webinar. That's vistage.com/webinar. Also, please plan to join us for our next virtual National CEO Conference, The CEO's Journey, People and Culture, on Friday, March 25th. And more information is available at vistage.com/peopleculture. Very exciting. We have some leadership experts with some, including Liz Wiseman. Very excited to hear her presentation. You might be familiar with her from her book, Multipliers. And finally, for our Vistage members, join us for a conversation with Indra Nooyi on Friday, April 1st. She's a former CEO and chairman of PepsiCo and will share insights on lessons she has learned about leadership from her notable career, first at Pepsi and then as part of the committee to reopen Connecticut through the pandemic. Fantastic conversation. So please be sure for our members to register online at the MyVistage app. So thank you everyone for your time today. Be safe and be well.